What's happening? It's Brent Axe, and we are live here on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page on this Saturday night after the Orange take care of business in a big way. They dominate Duke, get a much-needed win in many different ways. Syracuse's bowl hopes remain alive. Quite an impressive debut for new Syracuse, or maybe I would better be off to say interim defensive coordinator Steve Stannard. And Syracuse wins 49-6, and we are chatting with you live here on Facebook, presented by our friends at Krause Health. If you're watching later on YouTube, we certainly appreciate that as well. We do put all these live chats up on YouTube so you can watch them when you want. 49-6, the final score. Syracuse uses a third-quarter surge as, I'm sorry, I think I said that I'm still learning Coach Stannard's name. It's Coach Stannard. I mispronounced that a moment ago, but the new-look Syracuse defense, pardon me, facing off with, a Duke offensive line that had some injuries. Coming into the game, they had their starting center out. They lost another tackle in this game, I should say. We hope that young man's all right. He had to be carted off the field, had a neck injury there. I have not heard a status update on him since the end of the game, so we certainly hope he's okay. It's a Duke offense that came into this game leading all Power 5 teams, 21 turnovers into the game, and then Syracuse comes out of halftime. They're leading at halftime. But the offense had kind of stalled. So Syracuse came out gangbusters, those scripted plays early. They're running a lot of slants to Tristan Jackson. They're moving the ball well. Bam, bam. They score 2 early touchdowns, get up on Duke 14-0. But the offense had kind of stalled after that. So the defense says, we got this. Holding Duke down, coming out in the third quarter, 3 straight possessions with a turnover, one of those being a pick six by Andre Cisco. Syracuse cashes in the other 2 turnovers for touchdowns, and they roll a couple of fourth-quarter touchdowns added on. Jawar Jordan scores his first career touchdown for Syracuse, first touchdown since the Liberty game for Jarvion Howard. Syracuse ran the ball really well against Duke today, piled up the rushing yards, and just in so many ways got a win that they needed. They got their first Power 5 win of the year. They got their first ACC win of the year. They snapped a losing streak. And when you sit in a bye week for 2 weeks, when you sit around for 2 weeks after a bye week, right, and you make a coaching change, you make a defensive coordinator change, not an easy thing to do, a painful decision, as he put it, for Dino Baber, Syracuse football head coach, and you're just hearing how bad you are. You're hearing that basketball season's here. You're hearing everything but, hey, we want to watch you play football. But the Orange coming in, we're still mathematically eligible for a bowl game. They wanted to remain relevant in the conversation. They had not played at Duke. First time Syracuse visited Durham since 1939. The crowd was outnumbered 4-1 by empty seats. It was actually a pretty chilly night in Durham. So Syracuse had to be self-starters in this game. And they were from the get-go. They kept it up. The defense took advantage of what was in front of them, a weakened Duke team, and went on to a big win. Hello to Mary Ellen. Hello to Garth. Uncle Brent is here. That's right, Garth. Jermaine, thanks for popping in, and everybody that is starting to comment. Please leave your comments. I'll jump in there with you guys in just a moment here and react to what you're saying. Let's throw some stats at you, though, because there's a couple things to note. We mentioned the turnovers and the points that Syracuse cashed in there. How about this? Duke runs 80 – pardon me for a second. Excuse me. Duke runs 85 plays for 279 yards. That's an average of 3.28 yards per play. Syracuse, much less than that, 59 plays, 395 yards, 6.69 yards per play. After the first drive, Tristan Jackson had 2 catches for 68 yards, including a touchdown. You had Mo Neal in this game. Let's pull up Mo Neal's numbers overall. Rushing the football today, Mo Neal, 17 carries, 115 yards. He averaged 6.8 per carry. Jarvion Howard, 9 carries, 115 yards, including a 37-yarder. Mo Neal had a 35-yarder, a couple other big chunk runs. Jawar Jordan had a 17-yard run, 2 carries for 24 yards, including his touchdown. Abdul Adams didn't have the big numbers, but got in and ran for 18 yards. So what you had is Syracuse got their offense in bunches, got their offense in spurts, because the defense was so dominant. The defense, even though Duke ran all those plays, just did not allow them to get the scoring chances. Duke missed a field goal. They had to kick a 51-yard field goal, even with the winds going crazy down there in Durham tonight, just to get those 6 points on the board. So, and you look at Tommy DeVito's numbers. Not an impressive game overall for Tommy, 6 of 15, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is now, if I could do some quick math in my head, 146 attempts that Tommy DeVito has not had an interception. But you didn't really need your quarterback tonight, believe it or not, because they got the 2 quick touchdowns. They ran the ball so much. The defense was great that Tommy didn't have to carry the burden in this game tonight. So Syracuse got their scoring in bunches. Their defense was dominant. Just to throw a couple more numbers out there to show you how dominant Syracuse was in certain areas. We mentioned the overall rushing yards, 43 carries for 286 yards. Duke had 2 more carries, but only had 122 rushing yards. Syracuse averaged 6.7 per carry. Duke, 2.7 yards per carry. Syracuse only had 7 catches for 109 yards. Duke, not that much better, 19 catches for 157 yards in this game. We gave you the overall plays and yards, but just to kind of reiterate that, Syracuse ran 59 plays for 395 yards. Duke ran 85 plays for 279 yards. Turnovers were huge for the Orange. Overall team win, huge confidence booster. So the question now is, they got us for another week, right? How long can they hold our attention? How long can the Syracuse football team say, hey, we're still here. It's not the season anybody thought it would be, but can they salvage something? Louisville, as we speak, is playing NC State, so we'll see what the result of that game is. But Syracuse has not won at Louisville since 2007. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was that when Greg Robinson was coaching, I believe Syracuse was like the biggest underdog in history in that game. And I'm not just saying that because it was a Greg Robinson team. I think literally in college football and won that game. Or let me rephrase that. They won in terms of the biggest underdog at the time. I think that record's been broken since. So not an easy game to go down to Louisville. Louisville can score a lot better than Duke. I think they're a better overall team than Duke, and it's not an easy place to play by any stretch. Wake Forest got wrecked today by Clemson, as we saw. What was that, 52-3, I think, a final score. But your mission, should you choose to accept it, Syracuse, is to make that Wake Forest game on November 30th a bull or bust type of game, right? A bull, bid, or bust type of game. Can they get some momentum from tonight, beat Louisville next week, and make that an interesting game on the 30th? Keep our attention, not fully devote over to basketball quite yet. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the comments here. Garth said, best play game of the year. Happy for Cisco. Certainly was. 10th career interception for him. That is what a ball hawk that kid is, and well on his way to an NFL career. Speaking of which, Alton Robinson got invited to the Senior Bowl this week. Kendall Coleman got invited to the East-West Shrine game this week. So a couple guys trying to get their NFL talents going. Richard says, too little too late. I'm making excuses for a win over a bad team. Well, what do you want me to say, Richard? It would have certainly been a lot worse if they lost to a bad team, but you play who's put in front of you. They took care of business after 2 weeks. They held Duke to 6 points. This is a Syracuse team that has to take wins as they get them any way they can get them. So I don't know what you want me to say. You can say I'm making excuses. That's fine, your opinion. They went out and dominated a team they needed to dominate today. I'm reacting to the game I just watched. We'll see if it carries over. We'll see if they can beat Louisville next week. And like I said, make Wake Forest a interesting game. Make it a bull or bust type of game. But you call it making excuses. I call it, Syracuse beat a bad team and took care of business in a big way today. Richard says Louisville isn't looking great against NC State at the moment, so we'll see if that continues and what kind of matchup we get next week. Andy said DeVito just isn't showing me enough to believe in this offense. It's interesting because Dino went into halftime and said Syracuse had to make some adjustments offensively. The slant route early in the game was working really well, and they kind of got away from that. I think Duke made some adjustments defensively to cut that off. But I'm surprised they didn't do it. They went to Luke Benson, which was encouraging to see. Terrific 22-yard run for him. It wasn't Tommy's best game. It wasn't his worst game. But like I said, they didn't really need him, right? The running game was so well. The defense was dominating. So at this point, they're going to ride out Tommy as far as they can go, Andy, because, Clayton Welch just is not doing enough to push him. They are actively trying to get Cade Fortin, the North Carolina transfer, to come in. They're certainly recruiting at the position, so they're not just going to, sit on their hands when it comes to DeVito, and that's fine if you feel that way. But he did make a couple impressive throws in this game. One was dropped. He did overthrow Taj Harris on one wide open touchdown that was there, but came out firing. But it was interesting when the defense got away from the scripted plays, the scripted portion of things, or pardon me, the offense, when they got away from the scripted part of the game, it did fade a little bit. So, look, Dino said, the message was sent clearly that, Brian Ward may not be the only change. I don't think he's going to make a change with Mike Lynch. Those two have been attached at the hip for a while, but so is Dino and Brian Ward, so you never know. Let's see. Jermaine saying, let's enjoy the victory, people. Scott, we won. Happy. Yeah, I think you got to take what you can get, Syracuse fans. You can say it's a bad team all you want. You can be Debbie Downer. You haven't felt this way all year. This was their best game all year by far, considering where we are in the season, considering opponents. So I think, to use what football coaches use, that 24-hour rule, allow yourselves to be happy here, people, because it's been a string of misery the past few weeks. Let's see, Alex, I know this isn't about basketball, but Joe Girard III might score 4 times the amount of points that Duke scored today. Joe is tearing it up right now as we speak live. Syracuse basketball is playing Seattle. That was certainly the right move by Jim Boeheim to put Joe Girard III in the lineup. His leash is very long. We'll put it, and I'll just leave it at that. If you were paying attention to some things that were said on the radio and written about this week there. Richard said when DeVito ran, occasionally it seemed to work well. Yep. He's not that type of quarterback generally, but certainly can do it, and a little bit of an element of surprise. Syracuse tried a couple reverse plays. There was a throwback. Taj Harris threw to Tommy, and he would have had about a 20-yard gain on the play, but he kind of tried a hitch step and stepped out of bounds a little bit. So maybe we'll see that play in the arsenal a little bit going down the stretch here. Jake notes that Duke had just 1 sack. If that's not an impressive improvement for the O-line, I don't know what is. Jake, I'm glad you brought that up because they made a change on the offensive line, which I think was needed, risky in a way, but I think led to that improvement you're talking about, because Duke actually has a decent defensive line. I know they had some problems on other parts of the football field today, namely the offensive line, but they have a decent defensive line that could put pressure on the quarterback. So what Syracuse did today is they flipped Aaron Service and Carlos Vettorello. Carlos Vettorello went in at center. Aaron Service went in at left tackle, and it worked. There is no question it worked. I don't know why they waited this long to do it. Maybe you're a little hesitant because Vettorello has struggled so much at left tackle. You don't want him to get overwhelmed at the center position. The center position has more responsibility than the left tackle, but you had to protect Tommy DeVito's blind side. You had to open up Mo Neal and those running backs to be able to go to the left. So that's a change made today, and I think it's a change we're going to continue to see with Aaron Service at left tackle and Carlos Vettorello in the middle. They can always flip them around due to matchups and reasoning to do it if they see something to their advantage to do it. But thanks for bringing that up, Jake. It was an important move, a needed move, and I felt like maybe Mike Cavanaugh's job was in trouble, but based on some things that Dino has said lately, I said on his radio show the other day, maybe the performance of this offensive line, if they can, keep things going for the next 2 games, maybe Cavanaugh gets another year to work with this group. Matthew Bergeron's been great at right tackle. That offensive line was a disaster for, 8-9 games, but has made some slow and steady improvement here. Lost in the Boston College game was the offense was actually moving the ball, being diverse, a little more creativity. And then, when the bottom fell out in the second quarter, it didn't matter. But they got to do that a little bit today because, as we said, the running game and the defense just kind of took over in this one. Gregory says, good win. Syracuse needed it. Christopher wants them all. He wants Ohio State. He wants LSU. Now, I was about to say bring on Bama. This just breaks my heart to see this. I'm sure you guys saw it, but in case you didn't, Tua Tagovailoa for Alabama. Bad injury today. So he's in the game. Alabama's up 35-7. And at that point, you're saying, why is he still in the football game? There's a question whether he should have even played in this game. Suffered a hip injury. The hit that took him out, he had a big nosebleed, and they were tending to his hip, and they very carefully carted him off the field. It turns out he's out for the year. Not only does he have a hip injury, there are some reports out tonight that hip injury is similar to the one Bo Jackson got. And if you remember, Bo Jackson's electric NFL career was ended by a similar hip injury suffered by Tua tonight. Now, that was, 25, 30 years ago for Bo Jackson. We'll see if technology has improved, if medical care has improved, and if Tua can work his way back on the field. But this is a guy who was in the short conversation to be the number one pick in the NFL draft. And if you're an NFL team, do you still pick him that high? Do you take the risk taking a kid like that? It's going to come right down to the wire in terms of his health, his recovery, and what kind of player they think he could be going forward. It's going to be a long road ahead for Tua to get back, so we certainly wish him the best. Hate to hear that, even in a situation where it's football and it's a rough game and injuries are a part of it. Daryl asking, double duty. No, I just on football duty tonight, Daryl. Right after the chat, I'm going to write. And that's it. So I'm taking the night off from hoops, but there'll be plenty more of basketball discussion down the road for sure. Richard saying, yep, offensive line was better, but wasn't Duke. Missing some defensive linemen. We're missing a player or two, but their best ones were out there tonight for sure. Mary Ellen saying, thank you, Brent. I'm happy. You should be. Allow yourselves to be happy. All we've done is lived in wallowed in misery in Syracuse football the past few weeks. So, feels good, right? You got to win 49-6. Now they got to keep it up. They got to do it again on the road. They got to do it in a place they haven't won since 2007. And then hopefully that Wake Forest game is relevant. Hopefully that Wake Forest game, there's something on the line. And there's been a couple of exciting games at the end of the year in the Dome in recent years. We'll see if we get another one there against Wake Forest coming up in a couple of weeks. A few more of your comments here, including Rob, who says the Coastal Division has a lot of parity from top to bottom, as witnessed with the log jam in the standings. Was today's impressive and much-needed win for Syracuse a display of Atlantic Division supremacy? Rob, the ACC, as you know, has just been what a mess. This thing has been a disaster this year. And, Wake Forest got bombed today. We'll see what happens with Louisville and NC State. Nobody has really wanted to claim themselves as the second or third best team in the ACC. So for a day, I guess you could see that. That Coastal Division, though, is wild. Just absolutely wild. Virginia Tech got a 45-0 win today. Crazy week. Thank you, Garth. Appreciate that. And a little plug. So Garth notes here, good writing last week. Just so you guys know, not only am I doing my game recaps, but I'm writing a column Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now. So first thing, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, you'll see a new column from me on a variety of subjects. We wrote last week about Syracuse football, about Syracuse basketball, Tim Tebow coming back to Syracuse. So appreciate that, Garth. Little plug that you can read a lot more of the Axeman throughout the week. And, of course, recaps after every Syracuse football and basketball game, although I will not be, as noted, will not be writing about the basketball game against Seattle tonight, but full football recap coming your way first thing tomorrow morning. Let's see. Mike noting that either will be a bowl game on the line against Wake Forest or a coordinator's job on the line. That is a fair comment, Mike, because Dino's made it clear that, he made the change with Brian Ward, but everybody's kind of under watch now. And I think my prediction would be Mike Lynch would come back, but if we don't see anything tangibly improving in the next couple of weeks in terms of scheme, in terms of aggression, in terms of they were starting to get there tonight, kind of backed away from it, then all bets are off, I think, in terms of who returns on that staff next year. But if they ride it out, go 6-6, make a bowl bid, maybe you don't shake things up too much. All right, guys. I think I'm going to end it right there. Really appreciate you coming by as always. So as noted, recap tomorrow morning. Nate Mink and Stephen Bailey were at the game in Durham, so make sure you check out their coverage throughout the night here on Saturday and, of course, on Sunday as well. Columns 3 days a week. We'll have a new podcast coming out next week. Couple of guests I think you'll enjoy hearing from, and just content, baby. We're in that stretch with football and basketball crossing over, so a lot to talk about. Our next football chat will be right about the same time because Syracuse plays Louisville at 4 o'clock next week. So we'll be right back here after that matchup. Again, we do put it on YouTube as well if you want to check it out later. I put that in my recap. If you search Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube, our YouTube channel, you'll find it there. And you can watch it when you want on demand. Great stuff. Great comments, guys. You enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we'll talk to you again after the Orange take on Louisville.